Good evening, and thank you all for joining our latest round of statewide public hearings. My name is Charles Barker, and joining me tonight are Commissioner Krista Nash and Executive Director Jeff Brown. Before we begin, we just want to take a brief moment to thank our Public Engagement and Education Committee for all of their support putting this hearing together. We also want to thank you, the public, the people, for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. We know you could be doing anything right now, yet you are here, and we truly appreciate that. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to solicit public input from you about how tax revenue from cannabis sales should be allocated. The data shows us that certain groups, especially Black and Latino people and communities, were and are unfairly overcriminalized based on targeted policies and practices. And so it is imperative that we continue to hear from you, continue to host public hearings so that the legislature and governor can be guided by you about how tax revenue should be distributed. And that is a key point that I want to amplify tonight. The CRC does not control the allocation of tax revenue. As you will soon hear, the CRC is responsible for listening to the public, compiling the public's comments and feedback, and then drafting a recommendation report that we share with the governor and legislature based on your comments. Next slide, please. Just a few housekeeping items. Executive Director Jeff Brown will share brief remarks, followed by a brief overview from Commissioner Nash and myself. Then we will turn the hearing over to you to listen to your concerns, your ideas, and your thoughts. This is our last meeting before our recommendation report for 2023. And so please make your voice heard tonight. With that said, Executive Director Brown.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Commissioner Barker. Thank you, Commissioner Nash. Thank you to the whole Public Education and Engagement Committee. And thank you to all our participants who are joining us tonight to take part in this important hearing. The New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission seeks to establish and grow a responsible, regulated medicinal and recreational cannabis industry. We do that by applying the values of safety and equity. And we center our work around creating and protecting access for patients, the production of safe products, and promoting diversity and inclusion in this industry to develop a national model for sensible, fair oversight. One other critical role we play, as Commissioner Barker outlined, and as you'll hear from both Commissioner Barker and Commissioner Nash, is to get recommendations from the public on how to invest tax revenue raised from the sale of cannabis into programs, into initiatives that will help further the mission of equity. And, I want to note that our recommendations last year, you can trace a clear line from those to the first investment made with tax revenue, which is to fund the Business Action Center's technical assistance program for aspiring cannabis entrepreneurs. We heard last year that folks wanted help in the form of technical assistance, wanted the help in the form of capital, access to capital, and needed investment from the state to do so. And so we took those recommendations, put them in our report. Commissioner Barker, Commissioner Nash crafted that report with our audit committee, and then made those recommendations. And that ultimately led to our ability to recommend funding the Business Action Center and additional programs, i.e., potential access to capital programs in the future. So it is critically important that we hear from you tonight. We are very excited to do so. And with that, I'm going to thank once again Commissioner Barker and Commissioner Nash and turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Executive Director Brown. And thank you for all your support to our committee. We really appreciate it. Before we turn the program over to you, the people, we just want to briefly review the statutory process guiding the hearings and share some general updates. Next slide, please. According to the statute, the commission is responsible for holding at least 3 regional public hearings each fiscal year. This is hearing number 5 for this fiscal year. We had 3 hearings in November and 1 hearing last week on January 10th. As we stated earlier, it is imperative that we hear from you and we hope to continue these in the future. Next slide, please. When the hearings are completed, the CRC must review and compile the comments from the public and then draft a recommendation report to share with the governor and legislature. Next slide. The legislature is then responsible for allocating the tax revenue and sharing their investment decisions with the CRC. As the Executive Director Brown just shared, the social equity excise fee revenue from our last fiscal year was allocated to support New Jersey Business Action Center's Cannabis Technical Assistance Program, which Commissioner Nash will touch on later in the hearing. Here is a brief overview of some of the high-level recommendations from our previous report that the public shared with us during last year's round of hearings in March of 2022. Some of the major takeaways were economic development. A lot of the public comments centered around access to capital and technical assistance. And we were humbled and thankful to say we worked and are now seeing the fruits of that labor in an NJBAC first of its kind in the nation program, in addition to an NJEDA program that may also be a first of its kind in the nation program. Justice reinvestment was right up there, if not the most common theme. The public does not want to see any tax revenue fund law enforcement, especially in light of New Jersey Policy Perspectives report evidencing the significant sums New Jersey spent, roughly $10 billion funding law enforcement from 2010 to 2019. And considering the impact that the failed war on drugs has had on so many people and communities that we now hope have a chance to benefit from the tax revenue and the opportunities that it creates. The public did express that they want to see tax revenue go towards reentry services for people and families impacted or entangled by the criminal justice system. Next slide. Public health. We also heard a lot about public health, expanding healthcare services, mental health services, harm reduction services, substance abuse services, Black maternal health centers, and even more creative ideas. Workforce development and education was another major theme from the feedback. We are excited to see the strides that NJ Department of Labor is making, collaborating with our many community colleges. This can be a pathway for current and future generations to enter the cannabis industry through equitable opportunities that build an inclusive cannabis industry that reflects New Jersey's diversity. These are just some of the key highlights that Commissioner Nash is going to touch on later in her presentation. The major focus here on this slide is that the CRC may soon be expanding the license types available in New Jersey. And so, as we open for wholesalers and distributors and delivery services, we are hopeful that will increase the cannabis sales and generate even more tax revenue that can be used for social equity investments. Here we are highlighting impact zones in economically disadvantaged areas. Impact zones were in the statute. Economically disadvantaged areas were created through the rules. And many of the municipalities on both lists have been devastated by the failed war on drugs. And we are hopeful that a majority of the funds support these communities and their residents. And please refer to the QR code at the bottom corner of the screen for more information. A quick market update. We continue to receive applications, a majority of which are conditional, and we continue to issue licenses. And I'm happy to say, I believe we're up to around 50 or so conditional conversions and annual licenses. You know, this development in our industry, in addition to the expansion of the 2019 RFA awardees that are now onboarding into the personal use marketplace, is poised to generate hopefully more cannabis sales and increase the pool of funds available for responsible equity investments. A major highlight that needs to be amplified, if we can just go back there briefly. Since our personal use cannabis industry opened in late April 2022, the industry has generated over $200 million in cannabis sales through September. And potentially by the end of the year, we may exceed $300 million if we calculate up to December 2022, and we'll wait for Treasury to share those numbers with us. And I just want that to sink in for a minute, right? We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. And at the end of the day, even with $11 million in tax revenue that can be used for equity investments, the social equity excise fee is generating significantly less revenue, right? We're over just a little over $400,000. And so how can all of these great, important, and necessary ideas that you're sharing with us be accomplished with just over $400,000? As you stated during previous hearings, the governor and legislature need to allocate more direct funding if New Jersey is going to be serious about realizing the social equity investments necessary to right the wrongs of the failed drug war. Next slide, please. All of the tax revenue collected from cannabis sales goes into what the legislature established, a cream fund. The cream fund, and then you'll see on the next slide, is the depository for nearly all tax revenue, fees, and penalties or violations. And just briefly, before I turn it over to Commissioner Nash, I just want to review some of the high-level provisions guiding the allocation of tax revenue. And so you'll see on the next slide, you can go to the next slide. One of the key components for allocating tax revenue annually is that at least no less than 70% of all tax revenue is to be used for investments in impact zones. Now, remember, we touched on this earlier. Impact zones were identified by the legislature as socially and economically disadvantaged areas harmed by the failed war on drugs. The key takeaway here from the public is that most harmed impact zones are prioritized. The public has expressed that the complete list does not reflect communities hardest hit by the drug war. And so we just want to emphasize that the governor and legislature focus on communities hardest hit to ensure that an appropriate and equitable allocation goes to these communities. 15% of the cream fund shall be committed to underage deterrence and prevention, furthering the CRC's commitment to safety, in addition to properly educating and protecting the children of New Jersey. Direct financial assistance to qualifying persons is a powerful component. The cream fund allows the legislature to allocate money for eligible residents or families, right? These are very similar to universal basic income programs you may have heard about, or guaranteed basic income programs. And these programs are already underway here in Newark and in Patterson, and they're geared towards assisting low-income people and families with everyday living expenses. Operational costs to regulate our industry. Executive Director Brown has touched on this, and the public has touched on the fact that the CRC needs to continue to build out its infrastructure, needs to continue to hire more personnel to further develop the industry. We can't ignore the fact that the cream fund has statutory language directing tax revenue for drug recognition expert programs. We understand how that conflicts with your request that no cannabis tax revenue be used for law enforcement purposes, and strongly suggest that you reach out to your local representatives, elected officials, and community leaders to make this concern heard by the people who can make the statutory changes. And any remaining monies, if there are remaining monies considering the scope of need in our industry and here at the CRC, then those remaining monies will go to the state's general fund. With that said, I'll now turn it over to Commissioner Nash, who will go over the social equity excise fee.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I would like to just reiterate from our last meeting this report that I had found that directly relates to what we're discussing this evening. The U.S. cannabis industry is projected to be worth $100 billion by 2030. Yet those most affected by the war on drugs, they still face significant barriers to entry. According to this 2021 report from Marijuana Business Daily, the percentage of executive positions held by women and minorities in cannabis fell to 30% and 13% respectively. To combat this, programs focusing on social equity have become a crucial resource to help marginalized communities participate in the legal cannabis industry. Next slide. The CREAM Act, as Commissioner Barker mentioned, addresses this issue, among others, through a social equity excise fee. The social equity excise fee is a per ounce flat rate fee assessed on all cannabis cultivated and sold in New Jersey's recreational cannabis market. Next slide. The Commission adopted regulations on August 19th, 2021, that set the social equity excise fee at $1.10 per ounce, which is the statutorily required rate based on 1/3 of 1% of the average retail price of cannabis. Of note, the fee is not assessed or imposed on a transfer by a cannabis cultivator to another cannabis cultivator, or to a licensed medical cannabis alternative treatment center for use in medical cannabis. And beginning in January 1st of this year, the fee was increased to $1.52 per ounce. Next slide. So this chart shows the parameters of the fees that can be imposed. And as you can see, as the price drops, the fee can be increased. And that's important here. And Commissioner Barker just touched on that, because more monies will be needed to fund programs that we're recommending through you to the legislature. Next slide. All excise fees will be deposited into the CREAM Fund to be used for annual appropriations in social equity investments in impact zones and potentially opportunity zones, urban enterprise zones, Main Street municipalities, and New Jersey Redevelopment Authority designated municipalities. And I added those because if the commission works within other state agencies in New Jersey, that's where those monies can be directed. Next slide. So let's talk about some of the ways that tax revenue can support individuals and communities. Next slide. So these are examples of what the monies can be used for. At the public hearings held in March of last year, participants highlighted, among other things, the challenges involved in accessing capital for cannabis businesses and the need for technical assistance to support new entrepreneurs in this industry here in New Jersey. In response, funds generated from the social equity excise fee, as Director Brown stated, were allocated to the New Jersey Business Action Center to establish a program to provide free educational courses, technical assistance in building business plans, and completing other aspects of license applications, as well as mentorship opportunities to new cannabis business owners. Those initiatives are important. We see from the review of the applications that are submitted that people need a little more help. So the Cannabis Training Academy will certainly be of help there. In addition, the New Jersey Economic Development Authority announced in December of 2022 funding for a cannabis equity grant program. So although social equity excise fee funds were not used for this new initiative, it is anticipated that monies will be designated to boost the grant program funding as the social equity fund revenues increase. Next slide. So these are some more examples of programs that can be funded to support individuals and the communities they live in. But by focusing programs and efforts on individuals, families, and communities most harmed by marijuana criminalization and enforcement, New Jersey can set a model for other states regarding how revenue should be spent and who should benefit directly. Next slide. Tonight is our last hearing, and we are eager to hear your thoughts on how social equity excise fees should be spent. Next slide. I will now turn it over to CRC Chief of Staff, Justin Rodriguez, for the public comment period. Justin?
Thank you, Commissioner Nash. I will be calling those who signed up and 3 at a time. Please do your best to keep your comments within 3 minutes so we can get through all those that signed up. So once you hear your name, please raise your hand and I will promote you to speak. So we have Adelina Sayer, Nichelle Santos, and Eleni Glikis. Right, I see Eleni Glikis. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. I believe that the fees of the sale of cannabis products can be used to make communities better by investing in the most socially equitable and democratic institution located in any municipality. That's the local public library. Libraries are more than just books. At their core, they are and have always been about social equity. We build communities, form an essential part of the public service infrastructure, and complement numerous other institutions such as schools, public health centers, and cultural centers. In fact, the work we do is a lot of the same work that the SEF funds are already funding. Public library funding has not recovered from the over 40% cut after the 2007 recession. Our per capita state aid funding remains at $11 million, seeing only $1 million increase in the last 16 years, even though more people are using their local public library. As a director of a local public library in New Jersey, I know firsthand that additional support can help libraries meet community needs. In the last 2 years, my library was able to get over $270,000 in grant funding. And with that, we were able to create a digital literacy lab that helps entrepreneurs with their businesses, increases workforce development skills amongst the under and unemployed. And we're able to help young people use technology better and accurately. We've partnered with numerous local community partners, including Brookdale Community College, Lunch Break, and our one-stop workforce development center to be able to advertise these services and provide them at no cost to residents. Additional funding from these fees could help this lab and help other libraries provide these services to their communities. A lot of the work that's already being done by the New Jersey Business Action Center in terms of cannabis entrepreneurs can be provided by local public libraries if they were able to receive that funding. We helped numerous members of our community receive access to over $100,000 in funding through the Excluded Workers Fund in New Jersey during COVID. And we've been able to provide services we've never been able to dream of before, like 24-hour access to our materials through a locker system, providing Chromebooks to residents, and making sure that everyone could access our internet even when our building isn't open. New Jersey libraries are located in almost every community, with the exception of a couple of towns that do not have them. Our return on investment is more than $5 for every dollar invested. We provide small business support, cultural programming, and other services that benefit library users and non-users alike. We transform communities by facilitating lifelong learning and nurturing continuum of literacies across age groups, provide skill building and technical support for job seekers, help entrepreneurs launch businesses, preserve a community's local history, and offer cultural programming. All of these things are in line with the spirit of the social equity aspect of the CREAM Act. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, I see Nichelle Santos. Nichelle, go ahead.
Good evening. Okay, I was busy trying to chop down my 9-minute speech here. But good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to have this open forum to champion a cause to achieve social equity in the cannabis industry through cannabis tax revenue. I'm Nichelle Santos, New Jersey's state co-director of minorities for medical marijuana and founder and CEO of Canna Coverage Insurance Services. And I know firsthand the challenges cannapreneurs face and the barriers to entry in this industry. And I understand the power and change that can come from this room if we move with intentionality and speed. How the cannabis industry achieves diversity, equity, and inclusion will be up to all of us. The creation of public and private partnerships, alignment of strategies, and execution is critically important to improve outcomes for sustainability of the industry. Our approach to resolve social ills and stand up a resilient industry will require a transformative, multifaceted approach, the intersection of business and economics and social equity. So some of the social issues, restorative social justice, police reform with cultural competence, overserve the underserved, economic and infrastructure development of underserved communities, and empower the youth, education and after-school programs from preschool to 12th grade, and reduce classroom size. Second is business strategies of the medical, cannabis, and adult rec use. Restricted funds to provide grants to Black and brown cannapreneurs. Preparation of entrepreneurs through technical assistance training, workforce development, sustainable supplier diversity ecosystem. Third, medical cannabis. Address social determinants of health in Black communities to close the gap in health disparities. Education of medical cannabis as an alternative treatment to increase patient access. Expand qualifying conditions for medical cannabis, allow medical cannabis as an employee health benefit. So we clearly must increase the social equity excise fee to support the programs of the cannabis tax revenue for social equity, as many believe the term social equity is just another overused politically correct term to write, another bad check. We've heard this before. So is this just another empty promise? If it's a safe and vibrant market we desire, how the cannabis industry achieves diversity, equity, and inclusion will be up to all of us. So it's incumbent upon us to do better for the resilience and sustainability of the industry with investment. And I believe as a lifelong citizen of New Jersey, we can achieve the dream, be the change we want to see as a blueprint for a safe, legal, and inclusive cannabis industry with social equity and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call the next three. I do see a Nina with her hands up. If that is Adelina Sayer, please just change the name that you're on Zoom with to match the name that you registered to speak. So our next three are Joshua Alb, John Lombardi, and John DeMeo. Please raise your hand. All right, John DeMeo. Please go ahead.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, John. Are you there?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Executive Director Brown, Commissioner Barker, Commissioner Nash, other CRC members, and the public. My name is John DeMeo, and I work with Lucky Buds, a women-owned, minority-owned, conditionally licensed Class 1, Class 2 operator located in an impact zone. My comment today is not in regard to how the CRC can use the funds from the social equity excise fee to make social equity investments, but to how the CRC can use the social equity excise fee program in and of itself to make deeper and more diverse social equity investments in impact zone communities. The way the CRC can achieve this is by understanding that businesses and people are what make up a community. And if the CRC wants to support impact zone communities through this excise fee and through the cannabis industry, then they should be making additional efforts to support these cannabis businesses specifically. The CRC can support cannabis cultivators who are located in impact zones through either lowering the social equity excise fee, providing an annual discount percentage on that fee, placing a cap on that fee, or by removing that fee altogether from the cultivators that are located in impact zones only. It is important that the CRC do what they can to protect businesses located in these areas that were most affected by the failed war on drugs. By supporting these businesses, the CRC is investing in these communities and achieving its mission of improving these communities. By implementing this proposal, the CRC may also provide an additional benefit by incentivizing larger cannabis businesses to establish themselves in impact zones, which would further bolster the communities by providing two additional benefits that the CRC has noted in the past as important areas of investment: economic development and workforce development. We're calling on the CRC today to use its power to protect these businesses that make up these affected communities, with a special focus on cultivators with smaller canopies. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, we have Joshua Alb and John Lombardi. All right, and we'll go to the next three. Ingrid Minicapelli, Samuel Reichbart, Sarah Hallenbeek. If you heard your name, please raise your hand. Okay, we have Michael Reed, Benjamin Guy, and Michael Hammond. Michael Reed, Benjamin Guy, Michael Hammond. Okay, we have Alicia Hart, Walter Boudreau, Patricia Caesar. Alicia Hart, Walter Boudreau, Patricia Caesar. All right. Ron Bogdan, Isaiah Cruz, Matthew J. Rebel. Matthew J. Rebel, you have the floor. Just go ahead and unmute yourself. Yeah, you have the floor.
Sorry about that, my bad.
No problem.
Okay. Hello, my name is Matthew Rebel. I'm a resident of South Jersey, and I'm here to speak on where I think the cannabis tax revenue should be directed. I believe that the cannabis tax revenue should be directed towards providing solar panels to public libraries. The reason is that public libraries serve many functions to the community. They provide jobs, free Wi-Fi, free books, free use of computers, and other services. One service I personally saw was a free computer lesson. If public libraries were provided solar panels, they would then pay less for the utility bills. In addition, any excess energy could then be sold back into the grid for a profit. The savings and profit could then be used to pay staffers more money, provide more services to the community, or hire more people. People affected by the war on drugs will need jobs, and by providing solar panels to the public libraries, they can then get a job at the public library. Communities that are affected by war on drugs might suffer from less property value, which means less tax revenue. Solar panels on public libraries would mean more money for those communities that lack the money in the first place. Finally, solar panels last at least 10 years, and this one-time investment from the state government would certainly be worth the price. That is my case as to where I think the cannabis tax revenue should be directed.
Thank you, Matthew.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right. We have Nina Allen, Leslie Walker, Brendan Clark. Nina Allen, Leslie Walker, Brendan Clark. You hear your name? Please raise your hand. Okay. Odine Eccleston, Tina Knowles, Alicia Kelly. Odine Eccleston, Tina Knowles, Alicia Kelly. Okay. Angelo Lavisa, Tamika Brown, Perzon Felfelli. Angelo Lavisa, Tamika Brown, Perzon Felfelli. Seeing those names, we'll go to Samed Monk, Melissa Arnold, Tanisha Gibb. Samed Monk, Melissa Arnold, Tanisha Gibb. Tanisha Gibbs, you have the floor.
Good evening. My name is Tanisha Gibbs, and I am the Director of Expanded Learning Opportunities for the New Jersey School Age Child Care Coalition. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony to the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission. The New Jersey School Age Child Care Coalition, or NJSAC, envisions a New Jersey where every child has access to high quality, inclusive out-of-school time, or OST, programs that provide equitable and diverse experiences that maximize the full potential for all youth, families, and communities. Using tax revenue from adult use cannabis to support after-school OST and other youth development programs is a critical strategy for promoting equity and reinvesting in our underserved communities. After-school programs provide a substantial return on investment. With every dollar invested, there is at least $3 savings through increasing youth's earning potential, improving their performance at school, and reducing crime and juvenile delinquency. For every child in an OST program in New Jersey, 3 more would participate if a program were accessible. Consequently, 454,931 children, or 32%, would have been enrolled in an OST program if one were available to them. To meet the needs of our youth, families, and communities, these investments must be prioritized and sustained long-term. New Jersey has an opportunity to address the state's growing wait list as well as program gaps in rural areas as well as urban areas by leveraging existing federal dollars and directing adult use cannabis revenue to support after-school and OST programs. Alaska, California, Vermont, Colorado, Illinois, and New York have already linked revenue from legalized marijuana sales to after-school and OST programming. New Jersey is well positioned to follow suit. NJSAC, the statewide network for New Jersey's after-school communities, recommends that New Jersey dedicate at least 25% of revenue from the taxation of adult use cannabis to expand access to after-school across the state, particularly reinvesting funds in those communities hardest hit by the war on drugs. For teens and older youth, the hours between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. are the riskiest hours, as they are when juvenile crime, victimization, and drug use peak. Older youth who do not participate in structured activities like after school are 3 times more likely to participate in risky behavior, and OST programs prevent that kind of risky behavior. They are a safe space for students to participate in enrichment activities, and OST activities help students build character traits like self-control and confidence. OST is not only a protective factor, but it builds protective factors. And if New Jersey is considering the use of tax revenue to repair harm done to historically marginalized communities hit hardest by the war on drugs, then OST programs provide effective solutions for youth development and success. NJSAC submits the following recommendations for consideration. Establish the Out-of-School Time Advisory Commission Fund to support the goal of universal after-school and OST. The fund would award grants to all eligible after-school and out-of-school time programs, including licensed and subsidized school district operated and city-town municipally funded programs to build capacity and increase quality through professional development. The fund will also award grants to youth prevention organizations that offer college and career readiness, apprenticeships, and credentials to opportunity youth. This can include developing knowledge, skills, and character traits that are important for opportunity youth's career pathways development. New Jersey's youth need and deserve safe, enriching after-school and out-of-school time programs to aid in their development. Using tax revenue from adult use cannabis to fund youth development programs, including after-school and OST, is a good first step in social equity and community reinvestment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs.
Ms. Gibbs, can you please just share that testimony in writing for us?
We have already, we also included what those other states are doing, including Illinois, Vermont, Alaska, Colorado, and California.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. All right, Melissa Arnold, you have the floor.
Hello, thank you so much for having us have this opportunity to speak. My name is Melissa Arnold. I represent the Prevention Coalition of Mercer County, as well as the Mercer Council on Alcoholism and Drug Addiction. Being from Mercer County, we are a perfect microcosm for the rest of the state. What happens in Mercer County and what's successful in Mercer County can be successful in the state. And we're very proud of the efforts that we have spearheaded and been a part of to help keep our communities healthy, safe, and responsible. With the Prevention Coalition, we aim to make environmental changes that are used to increase protective factors and reduce risk factors, especially for our most vulnerable populations within our community. And we are always striving to maintain cultural proficiency. We are particularly worried about the vulnerable developing minds of our young people and really want these funds to go to protecting these young people and their futures. For this, we feel that funding and priorities placed upon education efforts, especially for those with safety measures, including parental education on the different impacts that substances have on young minds versus the impacts that they have on adult minds. We also want to promote safety campaigns about safe storage and use of this substance around children. Just for lack of a better example, what we do for alcohol. We want to encourage capacity building for existing programs. In the CRC's recommendation to the governor, you had some fantastic ideas, but we want to remind you that programs like this already exist and they just need more capacity, more funding for better trained individuals, especially clinicians that are trained in mental health and in substance use issues, longer hours, and a larger age range, including going down into single digit ages, because we are seeing impacts on much younger and younger children, all the way down to 5, 6, and 7 years old. Right now, there is the school-based youth support programs in Mercer County. They have these youth support programs in 2 of the 3 impact zones. They do a lot of very good work, but with unstable funding, they haven't been able to fully reach their potential. We need to help save these school-based youth support programs and increase their clinical staff, increase them to all impact zones, In Mercer County, that would only be extending it to one more, but also increasing the ages and the hours that they serve. We want to increase the capacity of needed protective factors such as community centers, after-school programs, summer programs, libraries. We want to fund efforts to change policies for in-school suspension and education, not just punitive efforts. We need funding for testing and screening and technology to maintain safety on our streets and in our communities. We need to fund compliance of sales, not just through the police, but through licensure and business penalties and practices. We need to fund responsible server training for the cannabis industry, such as tips and taps for alcohol. We need to incentivize student initiatives to increase mental health and substance use counselors, especially those in the communities of color, and cannabis-informed physicians. We need to expand early intervention support services to include children and youth and to expand their hours. I know that there's a lot of hard work underway, and we just wanted to suggest expanding and increasing the capacity in all the hard community efforts that are already underway. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Arnold. All right, that was the last of our registered speakers. I will now open it to the floor, to the rest of the participants. If you would like to provide comment on where tax revenue should be going, please raise your hand and I will promote you. All righty. And again, I ask if you are raising your hand, please have your name on Zoom match your name in actuality. But I will promote right now Sativa Cross. Sativa Cross, just please announce who is representing the organization.
Thank you. This is Edward Grimes from sativacross.org. We're a 501c3 advocating for cannabis patients' rights and for disability rights. And I would agree that the libraries need to be funded. There's many libraries without wheelchair access in New Jersey. Jersey City Marion branch has no wheelchair access. Things like that. Post offices without wheelchair access. I don't know if that's in the purview of this, but certainly police stations without wheelchair access, that would be within that, because we do have many police stations without wheelchair access, South Amboy, Bayonne, Brielle. I would also like to see social equity for people like Anthony Diaz. He was a Black man put in chains recently for growing cannabis for cancer. He was growing 50 plants in his backyard, and that's enough cannabis to grow, enough to treat your cancer, which is enough to make fully extract cannabis oil. So people like Anthony Diaz need a legal defense fund for them, because he's just going to get lost in the system. Another Black man getting lost in the system, a victim of the cannabis war. And it's unfortunate that we all talk about social equity, but people like Anthony Diaz is going to get swept under the rug and lost in the system. And I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to keep talking about him, and hopefully we'll get some support for people like Anthony Diaz, who's a victim of a drug war this year. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes. All right, Venus Smith, you now have the floor.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Venus Smith. Thank you for having me. I am a Class 5 conditional license holder in Jersey City. Dear Commission, thank you for taking comments on what to do with the proceeds from the cannabis industry. In my opinion, the funds need to be allocated to the severely underserved Black communities of New Jersey, especially those in 07304 and 07305, as well as those convicted and jailed due to the war on drugs targeted at Black people. Two avenues to give back directly to Black communities that can put the recipients on a path to wealth would be: one, instead of the baby bond $1,000 program that has been proposed, invest $6,000 for every Black child that falls under the median income in New Jersey into an index ETF, adding $50 a month until they turn 21 years old. At the age of 21 years, the recipients shall be required to complete a financial course to access a portion of the funds. Funds should be allocated over time in logical increments, allowing recipients the opportunity to withdraw portions of the funds at any time to purchase assets, real estate, or for unforeseen emergencies. Funds should be completely dispersed to recipients by retirement age. This fund shall be restricted from any and all debt collectors, including but not limited to the local, county, state, or federal government. This fund shall not stand in the way of a recipient's ability to obtain scholarships for schools nor grants in any way. Number 2, any nonviolent victimless cannabis conviction that results in expungement should be accompanied with a program that provides a path to home ownership, which includes a 20% down payment grant, ensuring no PMI and payment assistance for the duration of the loan. Let's be clear, I am not asking for any of those affordable housing scams inflicted on Black people through HUD, CBGB grants, Jersey City, or the state of New Jersey. None of those 95.5 ripoff schemes where Black wealth is stolen when the recipients want to retire. This program should be completely separate and devoid of any funds being paid back ever. Recipients should be allowed to purchase a home wherever they want in New Jersey and not be beholden to racist banking, low, moderate, middle, and upper income tracks on which mortgage loans are based. When possible, the commission should find Black-owned and Black-run banks and organizations to assist recipients on their journey. Organizations like the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey, Earn Your Leisure, and Red Panda should be considered prior to selecting traditional non-Black run organizations. It would be great to see the state of New Jersey use the cannabis funds to close the astronomical wealth gap and be the first state to truly achieve economic equality. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Again, if there's anyone in attendance that would like to contribute their comments to the record, just please raise your hand and I will promote you. All right, we have Jeff King. Mr. King, you have the floor.
Good evening. My name is Jeff King. I live in Eatontown. Just want to thank you for your time and consideration. Really important that we get this right. So thank you for hearing everyone who has repeated that law enforcement should not benefit from this. I am for public health. Anything we can do to help people stay healthy, I'm all for. And I agree with Mr. Grimes. Any victim of the war on drugs, whether you're growing medicine or anything, please help them. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you, Mr. King. Again, if there's anyone that would like to contribute to the record, just raise your hand and I will promote you. All right. Ms. Gibbs, would you like to go again?
I sure would. Thank you, sir.
You got it.
So I just wanted to share the additional what other states are doing on the public record. So thank you again for this opportunity. So what other states are doing in Illinois? In 2019, Illinois passed the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act into law, which legalized adult use cannabis and created the Restore, Reinvestment, and Renew, or R3 grant program. In 2021, Illinois announced a grant competition for $45 million in R3 funds with a set aside of $4.5 million for capacity building grants to help small out of school time organizations expand. In Vermont, in October 2020, Vermont legalized adult use cannabis. The legislation called for retail sales to be taxed at 6%, all of which will fund a grant program to start or expand after school and summer learning programs, particularly in underserved areas. In a couple of years, estimates are that there may be $3.5 million available to support the state's goal of universal after school. In Alaska, Alaska passed a bill to create a marijuana and education treatment fund. This fund establishes the Alaska Marijuana Use Prevention Youth Services Grant Program, which will fund before and after school care and youth program quality initiatives. In Colorado, the city of Denver is using a portion of the city's 3.5% special sales tax on marijuana products to help fund Healthy Lifestyles courses. The Healthy Lifestyles course is designed to clear up myths about marijuana and teach students about Colorado's unique laws regarding marijuana. In California, as part of the Proposition 64 campaign to legalize recreational marijuana, there was clear intent for after-school programs to be a prime beneficiary of these revenues. And so it is imperative that the legislature think about ways in which New Jersey can follow this trend, because New Jersey does deserve universal out-of-school time. And if an out-of-school time advisory commission fund were to be supported in this way, then the goal of universal after-school and OST could be achieved and reached here in New Jersey. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else that would like to contribute comments tonight? Please raise your hand. All right, going once, going twice. Commissioners, I believe that concludes our public comment portion. I'll turn it back over to Commissioner Barker.
Thank you, Director Rodriguez. And thank you all again for joining tonight's public hearing. Commissioner Nash and I are humbled and truly, truly grateful that you, the people, continue to raise your voices and continue to share your concerns and investment ideas during these Public Engagement and Education Committee public hearings. As we close, I'm thinking of a story that I actually just heard this morning, and I'm going to share it with you. The speaker shared a story from March 1968. I'm listening, I'm driving into work, and I'm hearing the speaker tell of a story from March 1968, just 1 week before our great leader, Dr. King, was assassinated. Just 1 week before Dr. King's assassination, he traveled to Newark, New Jersey, where he met with another late great leader, Amiri Baraka, and the local community members. And Dr. King was checking in on the state of affairs in the wake of the '67 riots. And the speaker shares how Dr. King was unsettled by the destruction and devastation of the community and the despair and discouragement that so many young Black and brown men and women felt. Fast forward over 50 years, and young Black and brown men and women are still plagued by very similar conditions of 1967. The impending war on drugs, popularized and fueled by Nixon's administration, made matters even worse and imposed even more discriminatory policies on certain groups, especially Black and Hispanic people and communities. Cannabis criminality was used as a precursor, in addition to other tactics, to abuse Black and brown communities and families. It is with this backdrop that we must ask ourselves tonight and every day going forward, how can tax revenue from cannabis sales be used to right these wrongs and repair these communities? You all share that the New Jersey cannabis industry needs more access to capital, whether it's from fair investors or whether it's a direct allocation from the government to build upon the $10 million that NJEDA used from their agency to fund their program. This can allow more people who were most harmed to benefit from the business and generational wealth opportunities. You said you want to see more Black and Hispanic minorities represented in this industry, more most harmed communities that can reinvest the tax revenue to service their residents and rebuild their communities. You shared that you need more municipalities to opt in and develop equitable rules and programs so that there is more access in the industry. You shared how we need more fair landlords, in addition to government leaders that are willing to get creative with the blighted, underdeveloped property in their borders and make it available at reasonable costs, not excessive costs. You shared how you want funds focused on communities and municipalities most harmed. Not all impact zones, but the impact zones that represent communities and people hardest hit and most impacted by the failed drug war. You also shared how you need more community centers, more after-school programs, more educational programs, more disability services, more legal aid services, more home ownership programs, more reentry services, more healthcare services, and many, many more great and creative ideas. We can't thank you enough for these ideas, for these concerns, and the general feedback that you share with us. But the work does not stop tonight. Please, please continue to monitor the CRC and hold us accountable. Ensure that our recommendation report reflects what you want. The legislature and the governor direct where the money goes. So please reach out to your local leaders and elected officials and let them know how you want cannabis tax revenue to be allocated. Commissioner Nash and I hope to continue to host public hearings on a range of different topics so that you, the people, are aware of and educated on important cannabis industry matters. Thank you all again. I truly cannot thank you enough for sharing, and God bless you. Good night.
Thank you. And Commissioner Barker, thank you for those comments. Very heartfelt and important and necessary. Thank you all
Commissioner
again.
Nash.